Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.
Welcome to all.
History is made of stories.
In this episode, we'll be giving you tools to better understand and enhance engagement, or rather, to encourage you to provide them.
The last time one of my colleagues spoke up in a meeting to question a sacrosanct decision made by the company, he was rebuffed. They said he lacked perspective.
And maybe that was true, but simply silencing him without giving him the means to understand is no way to cultivate engagement. So, how do we build ties to foster engagement? What's the story?
First, it's important to remember that engagement is underpinned by three distinct feelings: saying the project is meaningful, feeling able to contribute, and believing that contribution will somehow be rewarded.
This triptych, meaning, means, and recognition, must be the framework for all efforts to boost employee engagement. But it's not enough for each of these elements to exist, the employees have to know it. Engagement is based on a feeling.
In other words, creating the conditions for engagement isn't enough. You still have to create the feeling that these conditions exist. And this last aspect is often neglected.
It's not enough to simply say that they exist either. You have to make it possible for each person to understand them.
The first tie to establish is the one between the project and the company's strategy. If you initiated the project, you undoubtedly designed it in line with the company's goals, so the link is obvious for you. But it may not be for anyone joining the project along the way. You have to explain the purpose of the project.
The second tie to make explicit is the one between the project's end goal and the decisions made in the field. When you're sailing rough seas and uncertainty is everywhere, it's important to explain the reasons behind the decisions made every day and make clear how they contribute to the end goal.
Next, there's the tie between individual action and the group project. How can each player act in the best interest of the project if they don't understand how their work contributes to project as a whole?
Everyday teaching is mostly the responsibility of direct supervisors. That said, HR can't ignore these questions when working on organizational structure. Job descriptions should clearly establish these ties. Unfortunately, that's not always the case.
And when you're overseeing a vast project that impacts several departments, you have to explain both the project itself and how it impacts the different stakeholders.
Yes, and that requires a change of perspective. You have to talk about how the other is benefiting from the project in addition to talking about the project itself.
The fourth tie to establish is the one between the means and the project. Because to carry out a project, you need means, skills, tools, budget, etc.
This may seem obvious. Managers often draft roadmaps, support plans, tool rollout plans, and more. And that's great.
But sometimes the support plans, though lovely on paper, are really a pile of tiny tasks. And the people who receive them in the field, far from the offices where they were written, don't know how or when to use them.
And it's because the relationship between the means and the project wasn't made explicit. Toolboxes and best practices lists that arrive without context are quickly forgotten.
The fifth tie to establish is the one between the project and the benefits contributors can get from it. It's about answering the question why, by showcasing individual and collective interests, and each member's engagement.
You can't ignore either side of this coin. A company that only highlights the individual benefits to be gained by contributing to a collective project is likely to create mercenaries.
On the other hand, a company that focuses exclusively on the collective benefits is forgetting that human beings commit in return for some form of reward they see as valuable.
This tie must be regularly showcased when the project gets off the ground, during regularly feedback sessions, during individual assessments, etc.
Here, once again, it's the manager's responsibility, but it's also HR's responsibility when it's drafting remuneration policies, for example, or evaluation criteria for yearly assessments.
To recap, if you want employee engagement with a project, they need to fully understand it. The key to success is making ties explicit. It's up to leadership, HR, and management to enlighten them. Is that right?
Exactly right. Way to make a long story short. Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.